Good morning and welcome to Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV Big Fox. I'm your host, Frank Acom, and we are broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio here on Market Street in Corning. We have a very special guest this morning, and that is former Congressman and current chairman of the Steuben County Republican Committee, Joe Sempolinski. He'll be joining us in just a little bit. So I'm going to take a break right off the bat just so we can get kind of caught up, because when Joe and I get chatting, and sometimes run late, I do have a couple stories that I hope, well, we'll probably talk about it with Joe, as a matter of fact. I want to remind you, if you have any questions for the former congressman or for myself, that is our contact information here on the program. You can send in questions via text, via email, or you can leave a voicemail, and we try to read those at the end of the program or during the program. And as always, you can keep the questions and the comments coming well after the program as well. That line and obviously email is 24/7. So one quick announcement. The other day we had, I just think, a really fun interview. Everything's running smooth. We had a fun interview with Barbara Bloomer about the People Wall book called People Wall 76, and that's about the mural in City Hall here in Corning. Well, if you recall, today is the last day to pre-order. So I wanted to put that information up on the screen. There is the People Wall book. And if you recall, I've got to go through a few here. That's the front of the book. And then here's some of the pictures that we discussed on the program. We had a lot of fun with it. But the reason I go to it is for that right there. You can call today, but you must pre-order today. Please. I know they have a lot of pre-orders in already, so please, if you are interested, go to peoplewallhistory.com, scan that code right there, or call that number, 607-937-52. We are back with Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV Big Fox. You saw that beautiful view from Market Street, where we're broadcasting live from. If you own a business, you can always sponsor that cam. I mentioned that the other day. We would love to have you be a part of the roof cam and reach all the loyal viewers. So you can just contact me at that number on the bottom of the screen or my email there at the top of the screen. Interesting piece, and we're going to talk, talk with Joe Sempolinski about so many things this morning. But one of the stories that I don't have in the list of questions, this is kind of fascinating. We've talked about the open porous border. Well, there's a migrant caravan headed north, and it's swelling by thousands of people in just 24 hours. It's 7,000 people now, this caravan. Why did it gain so much traction so quickly in less than 24 hours? Chinese influencers, meaning social media influencers, are showing migrants how to cross the U.S. southern border. Now, there's a lot of implications here, a lot of scary things. We talked about the open porous border at a time when the FBI and so many others are saying there's real credible terrorist threats here in the United States. One of the reasons that could be, of course, who's crossing the border illegally that we're not aware of. Could they be terrorists? We've talked about this extensively. But then you add on to this the Chinese influencer part of this, as we talk about China and the real threat of China as well. Does this play into that idea that we've talked so extensively about on the program, where China is looking to take advantage of some of our weaknesses? And I believe that our open porous border is one of those weaknesses. Now, we are going to take another short break because I believe we have the former congressman on. Yes, he is on Zoom. So stay with us. We'll be right back with Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV Big Fox. Welcome back to Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV Big Fox. I'm your host, Frank Acom, broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio. And on Zoom this morning, we have former Congressman Joe Sempolinski. Joe, thanks so much for being on the show again.
The dark morning on Market Street.
I know.
Makes me sad. We were commenting off air 1 month ago. It was nice and bright in the morning. Now it's dark. We're going into the winter. But you know what that means? Elections.
That your favorite time of year. And also think, Joe, how much darker it's going to be at night coming up with the time change.
Yeah, that's always tough. But at least in the fall, you're falling back.
Right.
You get the extra hour of sleep instead of losing an hour of sleep. So that's as somebody with kids, they don't give that to you because my 3-year-old, my 5-year-old don't yet understand time zones and
Right.
daylight savings time. So they're going to get up when they get up.
Does not matter.
Nice. In theory, it's great.
Yes. For some, it is great. Now, excuse me. We have so much to get to. I don't know where to actually start. I thought maybe we could start with Mike Johnson because it'll tie in with Israel. We didn't have a chance to talk about that. I thought at some point, and I might have even seen somebody vote for it, that the vote was going to go to former Congressman Joe Sempolinski. Was that a rumor?
There, for a while there, if I showed my face in public, people would make the joke, "Hey, you want to be speaker?"
Yeah, of course.
Because that dragged on for over 3 weeks.
Yes.
And it was, you had Mr. Johnson was the 4th speaker designee. So we had McCarthy got vacated, then Steve Scalise, then Jim Jordan, then Tom Emmer was designee for about 4 hours.
Yes.
He didn't make it to dinner time. And then that night, Mike Johnson. Now, I will say that Mike Johnson is like one of the nicest guys ever. He was, when I was there, and until just very recently, he was the conference vice chair. So he was in leadership, but he was, at least in this Congress, he was sort of 5th in the hierarchy. And the conference vice chair is responsible for some of the messaging that the conference does, especially internally in the House.
Okay.
He would say, hey, this week we want to talk about inflation. So we can get as many people to talk on the House floor about inflation as we can, or whatever it is. So he's sort of like the assistant coach that would want you to like run a few extra laps or, make sure you go into an extra practice or something like that. So he had those sort of duties for the conference. My first full day, he came and found me, and he introduced himself. And he's from Louisiana, so he's not somebody that I knew. I mean, I knew Elise Stefanik, who's the conference chair.
Of course.
He was her assistant, but I didn't know Mike. So he comes and seeks me out and introduces himself on the House floor and says he's the conference vice chair and wants to make sure I knew that I felt like I was part of the team, that I had the resources of the conference and the conference staff available to me and my staff if I needed them. He's a very religious guy. He invited me to come to, there's a prayer group for members of the Republican conference. He made sure I knew I was invited to that. And the whole tone of the conversation was he wanted to make sure that the new guy felt like he was part of the team and felt like he was included. And I've used this analogy to, it's like being the new kid at school.
Right.
When you are elected in a special election, everybody's been there. The class dynamics have already come together, and you're coming in, the new kid that moved to town. And
now you've got to find a place to eat lunch. What table to eat?
Right, exactly. Yeah. Right. And so to have one of the leaders go out of his way, and again, just super friendly, funny guy, to make sure I felt like I was on that team, that I was as much as a part of the team as anybody else, really meant a lot.
Sure.
And I think, frankly, that's why he's speaker now. This is a guy that is so nice, so friendly, that he doesn't have any enemies.
And I heard someone say that he has the least amount of enemies, is the way they worded it, but that's what it seemed like.
I think that's true.
Yeah.
I mean, everybody likes this guy, and you can't help but like Mike Johnson,
right?
Because he's just so nice, and he's very conservative. So the Freedom Caucus folks like him, but he's not a member of the Freedom Caucus. So he sort of can straddle all different ideological groups. And again, when you're talking about, and I think this gets missed in some of the, national media, you're talking about the internal dynamics of 200 plus people. These personality things actually go a long way. Sure. If somebody is nice or not nice and they're running for Congress or some other office, well, the number of people that they interact with directly is relatively small for the electorate. Most of the electorate is hearing about them through the media or through paid advertising, what have you. When you're talking about an electorate of 200 plus people, everybody knows everybody.
Sure.
And everybody knows everybody else's quirks, everybody else's personality. so when you have a situation where this is dragged on for 3 weeks,
Yes.
we've tried 3 other dudes,
Yes.
and now you say, all right, what if we just make the guy that's the nice guy who's already in leadership that everybody likes?
Yeah.
Let's just let him do it. And that suddenly broke the impasse, and he gets in there with nobody voted against it.
Yeah.
No Republican even voted present.
Right.
He got all the votes. And I again, that's a testament to Mr. Johnson, now Speaker Johnson. And again, I'm sure my interaction with him was representative of other people's interactions, because I was in conference every week and saw how he conducted himself when he would present. This is the vice chair. He would present to us every week, and saw how he interacted with other people and interacted with me. And he's a delightful human being, and I wish him nothing but success. Obviously, I would want the Speaker of the House to be successful no matter who it is, but
Sure.
especially somebody so darn likable as the representative from Louisiana. I especially want him to be successful, and it's nice to see someone in politics who conducts himself in such a positive way be rewarded for conducting themselves in such a positive way.
I like that he was so, for lack of a better term, unknown, that the media, it took them a little time to realize, how are we going to attack him? Did you
Right.
notice that? I mean, it was quite because first it's, you Google search Mike Johnson. He's probably not even going to be the first one. There's so many. So all of a sudden they're saying, what can we say about him? And it was kind of a scramble at the beginning.
And I think that sort of was a product also of how this came about.
Yes.
Remember, at 12:15,
Yeah.
actually at 4 p.m., the day before Mike Johnson became Speaker, Tom Emmer is the Speaker designate.
Right.
So he went from being not the guy. Remember, he lost Emmer to being the Speaker of the House in less than 24 hours. So there
Right.
wasn't enough time for the media machine
Exactly.
to do what the Democrats do, which is construct some goofy narrative around him. By the time they were able to do that, he's already Speaker of the House.
Right.
He's already sworn in. And the speech he gave when he became Speaker, you notice it was sort of semi-unscripted.
Mm-hmm.
It was self-deprecating.
Right.
It was talking about his family. It was talking about a religious analogy. That's who this guy is.
Mhm.
You saw the real guy. There's no other Mike Johnson behind the scenes. What you saw when he got sworn in front of the whole world, the first chance to present himself to the world, he was very genuine, and that is who Mike Johnson is. And I think, and I hope, that he may be the man for the moment.
Yes.
Where we need somebody where everybody can rally behind him and do the work of the people and get back to regular order of how we do financing the government, deal with these international crises that we're dealing with right now, especially in Israel. There's a lot of work to be done in a very short period of time, and he may just have the right personality for the job, and hopefully the man meets the moment.
Well, Joe, when we come back, we're going to ask you about his idea to decouple Israel funding, from Ukraine. But we got to take a short break, okay? Stay with us. We'll be right back with Frankly Speaking here on Big Fox. We are back with Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV Big Fox. Our guest, Joe Sempolinski. Joe, thanks again for being on the program. So we said at the beginning, we were talking about Mike Johnson. Obviously, the media has been attacking this idea that he wants to decouple the funding because the talking point is that Biden will veto it, or Mitch McConnell doesn't like it, or whatever the case. What do you think of that essentially being his first move?
Well, I mean, they're different issues.
Yes.
So why shouldn't they be decoupled? And there's been sort of this talk about, he doesn't understand how this really works. Where you got to put this together and that together to get through. And I think that's one of the reasons that he's Speaker.
Right.
Is they wanted somebody that's just like, the American people don't like that.
Mm-hmm.
They like, hey, we want, go back to Schoolhouse Rock. Like, we have an idea for a bill. Let's write a bill, and then we pass a bill.
Right.
That's how it's supposed to work, as opposed to this log rolling, let's put it all together. And so he's saying, listen, we all want to do something to help Israel.
Right.
Maybe it should be paid for, so we do some cuts with it.
Yeah.
And maybe we make it just about that. That's not a radical concept. That's not him abandoning Israel.
Right.
That's him saying we are in massive debt. If we're going to send billions of dollars overseas, let's have cuts. And he's proposed IRS cuts to those big expansion of the IRS.
And don't you love that the headline said that this puts the nation at risk? Why? Because of IRS cuts?
Right. Yeah. Those IRS additions are relatively recent.
Yeah.
We operated without them, and this is the 87,000 additional employees of the IRS. So these are not radical things to your average voter. That's how they want Washington to work. And it's not how Washington works. So people are like, oh, we can't do it that way. Well, why not?
Right.
If you support Israel and you want to send taxpayer money to Israel, which, fine.
Yeah.
Well, and when we're in so much debt, let's cut it somewhere else. Let's make it just about that and let's send it. And as far as the Ukraine is concerned, if we're going to have that,
right,
let's have a separate vote on it. And those are two. And suddenly Mitch is saying, no, they're all one thing. Well, no.
What? No, they're not.
They're not one thing. I'm not saying that the war in the Ukraine and the war in Israel are not important.
Right.
I'm not saying that they're not crucial international things that are going on right now.
Of course.
But they're two very different situations. And to couple them is purely sort of insider Washington activity. So having a single vote on a single issue and paying for new expenditures by cutting old expenditures, it makes so much sense.
Yes.
That people in the Senate's mind explode.
Yes.
And hey, listen, let's bring things up for an up or down vote, and what passes with a majority of the House and passes with a majority of the Senate passes. And I don't really see the problem with it. I think it's part of the appeal of Speaker Johnson is somebody with a fresh set of ideas about not just what the business of the House should be, but how we're going to do business. And part of the reason that we went through this whole thing that we went through with the Speaker's vacation,
right,
is getting back to regular order. And regular order, certainly in most contexts, usually you're talking about doing a budget and doing 12 single subject appropriations bills, which I'm on the record. I was to that party before it was cool. I voted against 2 CRs and an omnibus. I was there 4 months, and they kicked the can 3 times. Yeah. And I voted no 3 times. And the reason I told the media and I told the public was because there wasn't regular order. That was a year ago.
Yeah.
So I'm all for regular order. The regular order is also doing legislation that's not fiscal legislation, that's not just the budget of the United States or the appropriations of the United States, but doing things in a transparent, open way so that people can judge the record of their legislators accordingly, as opposed to doing things in a more opaque fashion, which has become normal in Washington. Let's open up transparency. Let's open up how the legislative process is supposed to work and do things in a way that the people have been calling for a very, very long time.
So we're going to talk more about Israel here when we come back. Let's take another short break. We'll play a little catch up. We'll be right back with Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV. Big Fox, stay with us. Thank you again for joining us here on Frankly Speaking on WYDC TV. I'm Frank Acom. This is the Hesselson studio that we're broadcasting live from and on Zoom. Former Congressman Joe Semplinsky. Joe, we've got to talk about Israel because it's heartbreaking on so many different levels. Obviously, we're going to focus in a moment on the anti-Semitism that has reared its ugly head everywhere, like shocking. Right. But before, what do you think of... I don't like the media's coverage. I think it's very biased in Israel, and it always has been. But what do you think overall of what is happening in Israel and their fight against Hamas?
Yeah, I mean, it's a tragic situation all around. And where I get sort of perplexed and disappointed and saddened, this is a situation that started with Hamas just butchering well over 1,000 civilians, just in the most brutal, barbaric, disgusting way we've seen in the history of modern times.
Right.
Just animalistic actions by Hamas. And again, nobody wants civilian casualties. Now the difference is Hamas intentionally kills civilians. That's their tactic. They want to. Their
Yes.
stated purpose is the destruction of the state of Israel.
Yes, a Hamas official said yesterday that, quote, we will repeat October 7th again and again.
Right. So these are people that their only thing they're willing to accept is that there's no Jewish people in Palestine. That
Right.
is their stated goal, and they're willing to do it by any means
The
necessary.
most sickening, barbaric way. I mean,
Right. That they are a genocidal terrorist organization. That is their stated purpose. So they intentionally kill civilians. Now, nobody wants Palestinian civilians who are, if they're not affiliated with Hamas, to be killed.
Mm-hmm.
But Hamas intentionally uses them as human shields.
Right.
So Israel will say, hey, everybody needs to get out of the north end of the Gaza Strip. Hamas doesn't let them go. And then, of course, what happens when they come and take out Hamas is people get, sadly, civilians get killed.
Which is never, the media presents it as if that's almost Israel's goal. Israel is like pinpoint to make sure that's not happening. So this idea that they keep saying that Biden has to tell them. Yeah.
I'm against civilians being killed anyway.
Yes, of course.
But if Israel played by Hamas's rules,
Oh, right. Great
if
point.
they conducted themselves, because people are talking about genocide in Gaza or whatever.
Mhm.
If Israel truly wished to perpetuate a genocide or act under the rules that Hamas has set for the situation, act in the way Hamas has done, they just would have dropped the nuclear weapon.
Yeah.
Because Israel has nuclear weapons.
Yes.
They don't disclose they have them, but everybody
Right.
sort of
Everybody knows. It would have been over
They just would have dropped the nuclear weapons.
mid-afternoon, October 7th. Yeah.
This thing
Yeah.
would have been over in
Yeah.
2 minutes.
Yeah.
But Israel doesn't play by those rules. They are
Of
doing
course
what
not.
they can to get people out of there, and people either are refusing to leave or not being allowed to leave by Hamas.
Hamas.
So Hamas is using these people as human shields, human targets for propaganda purposes. They
Mhm.
want their own people to die for propaganda purposes. That's how perverse Hamas is. It's a horrible situation.
It is.
It's a disgusting situation. Hamas has to be destroyed, and to see people because remember, they still have hostages. They
Right.
still have hundreds of people held hostage, children held hostage,
Mm-hmm.
and which is, I don't understand why then you have people in the cities tearing down posters
Yeah.
of hostages. Even if you're pro-Palestine, or even if you're you have a very negative opinion of Israel, whatever your position might be, shouldn't we all agree that children
Right.
shouldn't be held hostage?
They should not be a part of a
in
war.
Gaza?
Yeah, I know.
If you're tearing down one of those posters, you're a disgusting human being.
100%.
You're a disgusting human being, because that means you think, if you're tearing down one of those posters, you think it is okay
Mhm.
because of your political grievance to kidnap children.
Right.
That's what you're saying. That you're saying that's an acceptable way
It's
to
sick.
deal with a political grievance.
It's sick.
And so it's really the situation in Israel is obviously distressing, but the situation at home, where we've seen the mindset of
Yes.
some of our own fellow countrymen about how they feel about Israel or how they feel about Judaism, but also what really I find distressing, in addition to those things I find distressing, is the implication that they feel terrorist activity is an acceptable way to deal with a political grievance
Yeah.
that you may have, and that is completely and totally unacceptable in a civilized world.
And I want to talk more about that, but just to your point, there's a piece at the New York Post today, and I want to make clear it is an opinion piece, but it's Hamas officials admit its strategy is to use Palestinian civilians as human shields. And why I say it's an opinion piece is because that's how it's written, but they go through and give the facts, and that's something that I think is overlooked. And now you see, and that's my next question, there's a lot of split amongst the Democrats. So there was a great article, I think it was by Michael Goodwin, that said, will Joe Biden go weak? Because he has been strong in support of Israel, but then you start to see a little bit of weakness and a little more weakness. Will he go weak for political maneuvers, or because now the media is saying he has to put down his foot and stop these civilian casualties, like as if it's his job? So do you think he'll get weaker as time goes?
I mean, it's an interesting dynamic within the Democratic Party.
Yes.
Where on the Republican side, it's pretty unified in support of Israel. I mean,
Right.
there's a
Different
broad
Sure.
consensus of all different flavors of Republicans.
Sure.
And even, to be fair to my friends on their side, most mainstream Democrats are, have their heads screwed on straight about supporting Israel. But there's an increasingly vocal, increasingly large portion of the farther left that is pretty vocally on the other side of this. And so it's going to be a real test of courage for Joe Biden
Yes.
as to how he's going to handle the situation. And I don't have a lot of confidence in Joe Biden,
No.
period.
No.
Just in general.
Let alone on
I'm
foreign
having a lot of
policy.
confidence, and especially
Yeah.
foreign policy.
Yes.
Like this guy
Yeah.
is the worst
Yes.
foreign policy president in American history. Afghanistan
Yeah.
leads to Ukraine, which leads to this. And in that case, we talk about, there's a relationship that, Mitch McConnell's trying to create a relationship between Ukraine and Israel, which I disagree with as far as funding. But where I do see a relationship is the common thread
Yes.
for all the crises in the world is the American president stinks. That's your common thread. I don't think that affects funding. But, Joe Biden being a joke,
Yeah.
it leads to all of these things happening. So I don't have a lot of confidence in Joe Biden, period. But I hope he continues to stand with Israel as our democratic ally. And again, we're trying to find ways. I know Israel is allowing aid trucks to go into Gaza. They're telling civilians in North Gaza, you need to get out.
Right.
They're trying to do what they can to minimize civilian casualties. But Hamas doesn't want to minimize civilian casualties. They want as many civilian casualties as possible for propaganda purposes of their own people. Remember, these are people that are given infrastructure for water,
Right.
and they take the pipes and turn them into rockets.
Yeah.
That's why Gaza's a hellhole, because Hamas has been running it,
Right.
and they've been using it as a 2 million person human shield so they can attack Israel.
Yes.
And try and drive it into the ocean. Or into the sea. It's really just the worst of the worst that we're seeing, and we thought that we had moved past this as a humanity beyond this anti-Semitism and beyond this type of terrorism.
And we're going to talk a little bit more about it. It does concern me. This morning, Biden, or late yesterday, said, I think we need a pause. A pause means give time to get the prisoners out. We'll see where that leads. But let's take a short break. We'll be right back with Frankly Speaking after this. We are back with Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV Big Fox. I'm your host, Frank Aiken. We got Joe Sempolinski on the line this morning. So, Joe, I want to go back to the anti-Semitism, and it's a topic that I think we can both agree that we hate to have to talk about, but I talk about rearing its ugly head is the term that I keep using. And Cornell, right in our own backyard, how sickening is that?
So remember, when I was in Congress, I represented Tompkins County.
Right.
That's now in a different congressional district than where Elmira Corning is, but at the time, Tompkins County was in the 23rd congressional district, and so I represented Ithaca. I represented Cornell University, and it is shocking, and I'm ashamed to see what has gone on in Cornell's campus since this. You had a professor stand in the Commons and say he was exhilarated by what happened with Hamas.
And that was early.
Israel.
That was like very early.
That was like that was a while ago. That was 2 days ago.
Yeah.
So he was exhilarated by that, which is I don't know how perverse that is.
Yeah.
And then most recently you had somebody, it looks like they found him. He was a student. I think he was from Pittsford, is where he's from originally.
Pittsford, New York. Yeah, Pittsford. Yeah.
Up by Rochester.
Yeah.
And he was posting. I mean, we couldn't even say it on the air.
No.
What he was posting. We'd be taking the FCC would take us out
Yes.
of the air if we said.
And rightfully so.
On Cornell message boards about what he wanted to do to Jewish people, and so we're not even talking about saying something about his opinion about Hamas or his opinion about the war or who should control Palestine or Israel or who whatever. He wasn't talking about that. He was talking about brutalizing
Mm-hmm.
in the most graphic of terms
Yes.
Jewish people. So this is right in our backyard.
Mm-hmm.
You know, if you're in Corning or Elmira, that is less than an hour away, and you have people expressing this type of opinion, and it really shows. And we've seen this in other college campuses too. Cornell gets more attention here because it's the biggest college campus in the region, but it shows just how far gone our college campuses are.
The
type of,
Mm-hmm.
and these are places where if you use the wrong pronoun,
Mm-hmm.
it'd be the end of the world.
Your career's over. Your
You'd
future's
be
over.
Canceled is horrible. If you have some sort of microaggression,
Mm-hmm.
end of the world.
Mhm.
And you have people openly talking about being exhilarated by the slaughter of 1,400 plus
Yeah.
civilians.
And administrators at these
people-
colleges are not handling this
Right.
at all. They do,
No.
and you want to say, well, maybe they just weren't expecting it. How do you not expect it when you've been breeding this kind of rot
Right.
in your institution for this long?
Yeah, I expect them to, come down on these people far worse than what we've already seen people come down on for expressing conservative
Exactly.
opinions.
Mhm.
And we haven't seen it. All of a sudden, everybody at Harvard or Cornell, they're all for free speech.
Yeah.
So what I think people should do,
Yeah.
is we should have conservative commentators go on these campuses right now.
Yes.
Oh, you're for free speech?
Mhm.
Oh, all of a sudden you like free speech. We can say whatever we want, whatever things you want to say. So I'm going to show up, or whoever's going to show up and say the conservative point of view on these college campuses, because now they got to let it say.
Yeah.
Because if you're willing to let people say the horrifically anti-Semitic things that they're saying on campus, well, you got to let people say, hey, I'm pro-life.
Yeah.
Or, hey, I have a traditional view on X issue. Or, I prefer smaller government.
Yeah.
That's a lot less offensive than
Yes.
some of the things they suddenly think are protected by free speech.
Mm-hmm.
So the hypocrisy is really showing in these college administrators.
Yes.
And just how far gone these institutions really are to become they're more indoctrination camps than they
Mhm.
are educational institutions.
And I do think there are some professors, because we've seen it, it's too little too late, but all of a sudden said, whoa, maybe this has gone too far. Because, they're saying, well, the anti-Semitism, I can't remember who it was a professor who said, I did not realize there were so many anti-Semites. I didn't realize it. And, well, it's too little too late. Welcome to something that we as conservatives have been saying for a very, very long time.
Right. There's been an interesting phenomenon over the last few weeks for progressive, liberal, democratic Jewish people,
Yes.
where they're seeing that, the people that are attacking them,
Yeah.
or attacking Israel, or attacking being anti-Semitic, whatever, they are almost universally
Right.
people on the far left.
Right.
And so for people who are Jewish who consider themselves liberals, it's been a real eye-opening experience to say, the people that are attacking their very humanity are the people they thought were their ideological allies on other issues.
Yep.
And it's sort of showing that, well, maybe the boogeyman in our political life as Americans, the one that's being portrayed as being negative or extreme,
Right.
maybe we had it wrong.
Right.
And so hopefully that translates into some shifts in how they conduct themselves politically going forward.
Yes, and I read a piece on the air, this was a while ago, but if you are a liberal Jewish person and you've checked all the boxes, you've supported this cause, you donated this cause, but now when your very existence is being threatened, and those people, maybe they're not speaking out against you, but just the silence, they said, was heartbreaking. I thought that was a good point. Another point before we go to break, Cornell University, this is what I mean why I don't think they know how to handle these kind of controversies. Cornell University cancels class Friday after the student was charged with threatening its Jewish community. That makes sense, but what about today? Today's Thursday, so it's going to be more stressful on Friday? I don't understand that. I think a couple days of
healing.
healing.
A little odd
Yeah,
timing.
I know. Go today, which would probably be more.
Do with, maybe there's a specific threat on Friday.
Yeah.
Friday is the Islamic holy day of the week, just like Saturday is for Jews and Sunday is for Christians. So maybe that has something to do. I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm not going to expect a lot of rationality from Cornell.
No.
But yeah, you'd think if there's a threat, you'd sort of handle the threat.
Yes. Let's take our last break, because when we come back, I swear we're going to talk about local races. It's kind of important. November 7th, get out and vote. We'll be right back with Frankly Speaking. Stay with us. We are back with Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV, Big Fox, broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio. On Zoom this morning, we have former Congressman Joe Sempolinski. So, Joe, promise to local races. But first, how excited are you for the presidential campaign of Dean Phillips? You have been calling for this for years.
He's got a wrapped bus and everything.
His whole budget.
I served in the United States House of Representatives. Prior to him talking about running for president, I couldn't have picked Dean Phillips out of a lineup.
No.
So I don't think Mr. Phillips is going to be the next president of the United States.
No.
However, I like the idea that somebody's running against Joe Biden. I like the idea that people on the left are willing to say, whoa, wait a minute, something's gone wrong. So that just leads to chaos.
Yes.
Over on their side. I don't know if Phillips is prominent enough to cause a lot of chaos.
Right.
But anytime, as a general rule, anytime Democrats are fighting Democrats as a Republican Party leader, I like it.
Yes.
So Dean, and where there's a real issue, Biden has tried to get rid of the Iowa caucuses,
yes,
the New Hampshire primary. So the caucuses is a party-controlled thing, so that sort of went away with a lot of protest. New Hampshire, it's a state-controlled thing.
I love it.
So there's going to be a New Hampshire primary. And Dean Phillips is going to be the only, well, I guess Marion Williamson too.
Yeah.
But Biden's not going to be on the ballot.
Right.
So there's going to be a headline after New Hampshire potentially. Dean Phillips wins the New Hampshire primary.
I love it.
Which is a total mess, because that primary's happened whether Biden likes it or not. And so there's now talk about, does the DNC have to run a write-in campaign for the president? And now they're in a position where if they try to do a write-in campaign and it fails,
then you're in real trouble.
Now you got now he legitimately lost. So as a chaos agent, I'm intrigued by Mr. Phillips. As a presidential candidate, I don't think that's going anywhere. But if he wants to stir the pot and make Joe Biden sweat about New Hampshire, God bless him.
Yeah, I'll sit back. All right, we have two comments before we go to local races. This is directly to you, Joe. First of all, quote, my favorite shows are when Joe is on.
Hey.
It's nice.
Is that my mother?
I was just going to say.
Yeah,
I see her email, Jessica. Second one is, Joe is speaking so much common sense. Will we ever see a series of clean bills presented in Congress? I think that is the only way to effectively minimize wasteful spending. Both very good texts.
I 100% agree. That's been my, as I mentioned, when I told the public why I was voting no. Obviously, I'm against big spending, and the Democrats were controlling the House at the time, so the omnibus was huge spending, and the CR was locking in their spending levels, so they had that. But then also, my stated reason at the time was lack of regular orders. This is a drum I've been beating for quite some time, and I appreciate the comment from the public. I agree.
Yeah. So let's talk about the local races. It's hard to believe, Joe, because we've talked about it so much, and I've had so many guests on the program, that obviously less than a week away, November 7th, coming right up. What are you seeing?
Yeah, local race is very important, and people sometimes don't vote 'cause it's a quieter year. There's nothing going on with the president. There's nothing going on with the governor. But who is your county legislator, who's your city council person, is important to your day-to-day life, and your vote counts so much more.
It does.
Because you're not one vote out of hundreds of millions. You're one vote out of hundreds or thousands.
Yes, if you're lucky.
And right. So your vote counts quite a bit. We've got races in Forney, we got races in Cornell, we got races in Wayland-Cohocton, we've got races scattered throughout the rest of the Steuben County area and also the other counties nearby. Early voting is open now. You can early vote through this weekend, and there's a big push from the Republican Party to have people bank their vote early. The idea being, if prime Republican voters already have voted, campaigns can spend their time driving out the voters that are a little harder to get out to vote.
Okay.
You don't have to worry about the people that have already voted.
Did I see you did? You did, right?
I voted early, yeah. And I know there's a lot of Republicans that don't like the early voting. I hear it, I get it.
Yeah.
But those are the rules at the moment. When the Republicans win elections, then we can change those rules to what we would prefer. But we have to deal with the rules as they're written, even if they're not the rules we would want.
Right.
So I encourage people to get out. And the other thing is, if you're push off till election day to vote, maybe you get sick, maybe your kid gets sick, maybe you got called into work, and something happens.
Great
put
point.
all your eggs in that basket. So we're definitely pushing that. And remember, early voting is still in person. It is not through the mail. It is in person. But I'm very excited about our local candidates. We have a very strong local team, a lot of young candidates, a lot of female candidates locally. We have a very strong, robust Republican Party in Steuben County, and I encourage everyone to get out to vote for that ticket there in Corning. We've got Allison Hunt, who's been on your show, running for county legislature. We got Lisa Illig-Homan running in the 4th ward. Those are two very strong candidates. They're both moms. They both deal with day-to-day life just like your average voter does.
And it's hard to believe how strong they campaign with how many responsibilities they have.
That's right. Yeah,
very impressive.
I was out campaigning with those candidates this weekend in Corning myself, and I saw their kids when I was in Corning. They were dealing with that. Like I said, they're young moms. Another young mom, we have Shannon Logsdon running in Wayland-Cohocton for county legislature, and we have 4 contested city council races in Hornell. So I'm very excited about the ticket that we've put together, and we just need to make sure that people get out to vote. If the Republicans get out to vote, we will win all those races. But this is a year where if you're caught napping, you may not get out to vote. But we have the better, more qualified candidates in all of these races that are better on their policy positions and also better on experience. So I'm very excited about that team. Vote, 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 vote. Everybody needs to get out to vote if you're within the sound of my voice.
And you raise a good point about early voting because, when it's a presidential year, you're not going to miss the fact that it's election day. Everywhere you go, whether you're on social media, news, TV, you're going to hear. But it's very easy not to remember on a random Tuesday in November that it's election day, honestly, because unless you watch Frankly Speaking, where we're going to beat the drums, you may not even know.
Well, that's the problem. Why are everybody needs to be watching Frankly Speaking?
Exactly.
If they're watching Frankly Speaking every morning on Big Fox, then they're gonna know everything's going on in the world.
They're gonna
have everything set for the day.
From international,
that's the solution right there.
International to Corning ward politics. I love it. We got it all.
You got it all figured out right there, right in the hot tub, the Hesselson studio.
You're right.
Market Street, Corning.
Perfect. So what should people know, Joe? Just my kind of boilerplate question that I ask the candidates, but I'm going to ask you. What should they know before Election Day, before they head to the booth?
What should they know is that the difference between the Republican ticket and the Democratic ticket is we're going to govern with common sense. We're going to protect people's tax dollars and make sure that they're going in the right direction, not being wasted. We're pro public safety as far as supporting our police, supporting our sheriff's office in Steuben County. This is the issues that are going to keep their families safe and keep them prosperous. They need to be voting for the Republican ticket up and down the ballot. Vote row B, whether they're voting early or whether they're voting on Election Day. As long as they vote and vote for that Republican ticket, they're going to be very pleased with the government they get at the county and local level.
Joe, thanks so much for giving us so much time. As always, I appreciate it, and I know you really look forward to Election Day. You're going to be in full party mode.
It's Super Bowl, man.
Yeah, it is.
It's also my daughter's birthday.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So I'm going to spend a little bit in the morning with my daughter and then go.
So your daughter has a morning birthday party? The only person that ever have a morning?
Well, we're going to do a party that weekend.
Oh, okay.
She's going to get a breakfast with Dad. Yeah. Special thing, and then I got to go do my thing.
And we'll see you in a couple days, honey.
Yeah.
All right, Joe, thanks for being on the show.
All right, thanks, Frank.
All right, join us tomorrow morning starting at 7 for Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV, Big Fox.